Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matt Zinnel. I am a system specialist with Aladtec. And through today's webinar, we will take about 45 minutes here to give you a quick overview of the Aladtec system. We will have a couple of polls as we're navigating through the system here, just to learn a little bit more about the agencies and everybody who's attending here today. And also throughout the webinar, we do encourage that if you have questions, feel free to drop those into the questions panel. And I have David Snyder also on my end, who's going to be answering those throughout the walkthrough itself. I also will be tackling some of those questions at the tail end of the webinar today. So if there's anything I need to actually show you on screen, we will be doing that. But before we jump into the actual overview of the system, let's talk a little bit about who we are. So what is Aladtec? We are a cloud-based scheduling and workforce management platform. The system is designed to handle the unique staffing habits of law enforcement, any sort of 24/7 public safety agency scheduling. We are based in River Falls, Wisconsin, about 30 minutes east of Minneapolis, St. Paul. We do house everything in this building. We don't outsource anything as far as any of our supports, our development. That is all going to be in-house within our walls here. Our company did start in 2002, and since then, we've grown to host over 2,300 agencies with 145,000 users across the US and Canada. So you can see here's a little snapshot of kind of the agencies we have across the country. Now, as far as law enforcement scheduling, we do handle sheriff's departments, anything from your very small range of, let's say 15 officers, all the way up to more agencies upwards of 100, 150, 300. Definitely can manage whatever type of scheduling that your agency is doing. It's just a matter of configuring the system properly for you. And then, as I mentioned, we do everything in-house. So as far as all of our support, our sales staff, our engineering, it is all going to be in-house right here at Aladtec. Now, I did talk about support a little bit. One nice part about our support team is that when you call, you'll always speak with a real person. So you'll have access to them through our 800 line. You get unlimited access to them throughout your subscription, and it's a big part of how we can definitely keep our customers happy. If you ever get stuck on anything, you can always feel free to give us a call. You don't have to wait for a support ticket or anything like that. And then the system being cloud-based, you can access it 24/7 from any desktop, tablet, smartphone. It will instantly update. You never have to update it yourself, and you always have the most current version of our product. And there's definitely no extra cost to that. So again, that's all going to be wrapped into your subscription. Any sort of setup, there's no additional fees for your setup or your training. If you are going to be a new customer coming on board, something that is definitely all built into that process. So I did want to run a quick poll here quickly, just to get a feel for everybody who's attending here today. And we will launch that. So just a quick little poll to understand what kind of department are you? Are you a municipal police department, sheriff's department, more of a university police department? Again, we can kind of handle all of these a little bit differently. It's just a matter of kind of knowing what your specific needs are going to be. So we'll leave that open here for just a few more moments and share those results. All right. So it looks like, okay, pretty well split between the municipal and sheriff's departments, but we also do have a couple who are from more of a university standpoint. That's great. All right. And next, we're actually going to jump into the overview of the Aladtec system. So this is, of course, the bulk of what we're going to be covering today. So let's just flip over here. All right. So just kind of kicking things off, what we're primarily going to be looking at is the administrative perspective of the Aladtec system. A little bit later down the line here, we will also be walking through the mobile side of things to show you what it's going to look like on a smartphone, and then also more on the user end. But primarily, all the functions are going to be for more of your supervisor, scheduler, or admin level. But with the desktop version, when you first log in, this is the first screen that you're going to see. You can really update this screen and personalize it with any sort of content that you'd like, any sort of images, links, videos. A lot of people will put very important, memos right on the front page there and highlighted in bold, so people will see that right when they log in. And then you also have your dashboard off to the right, where the dashboard is really going to be unique to each person based on what your given access is. For example, if you're a dispatch supervisor or a patrol sergeant, it's going to look completely different as far as the staff that you manage. Any sort of pending request here off to the right of what's currently awaiting your approval, so signups, time off, trades, anything like that. We also do offer, it'll show you any sort of upcoming shifts. Along with that, we offer an information expiration report. So if you have any sort of need to track expiring licenses or certifications and when those actually need to be renewed, some of those instructors' licenses, we can load all of that data right into our system, and then it'll give you a quick heads up of where those are at. I'll show you more on that in just a few moments. And then any sort of events, trades, or discussions are located right there too. So we'll be going again through each of those as we're navigating through the system here. And again, I just want to encourage everybody, if you have questions that you're thinking of right away as I'm showing you something, just feel free to drop that into the chat window and we'll get those addressed right away for you. All right, so the next screen we're going to be diving into is the member database. And the member database is where we store all the different profiles for all of your staff. So you can track really any sort of information that you'd like in here, anything from your basic contact information, hire dates, let's say some of those different certifications. These are just some basic examples of what other departments are tracking. So totally up to you as to how you manage this. But again, this page is only accessible to more of your admin staff, where your officers, they only really get to see their own profile. So if we hover over Frankie here and hit edit member, that's going to take us right into Frankie's screen and what he would see. So just kind of starting from the top, you have some of your basic credentials, first name, last name, login password, date hired. It's all pretty straightforward. This is also where you're going to have your access level and your work groups, which those are different profiles that we'll be creating in your system to regulate what they're allowed to do within the system. So can they create certain forms? Can they manage the schedule? That's all determined based on those. We also do have your messaging information right here. So this is where each person can plug in their mobile phone number and their email address, as text message and email are going to be our primary communication tools that they can utilize. And once they get that information added in, then each person can really choose their preference. So do I want to get emails and or text messages in any of these scenarios here? And again, they can choose that on their own as an officer, or what you can do is you can kind of lock down the profile and you can actually manage that on your own as an administrator. And then if anyone does have any part-time or auxiliary staff or people who aren't working fixed schedules, this is also a really important one. But of course, anybody can use it. This is our upcoming shift reminder. And what this tool does is it'll send out that message 24 hours before each of your shifts. And that's just going to remind you of when and where you're actually working that next day. All right, now right below that section is our work qualifications. So this is one of those many areas that will be very specific to your department. We can customize these however you need to, and just about every one of our systems look different. So we have all your unique schedules and then all of the different positions within them. So based on what's chosen here, we'll really regulate how they're allowed to interact with the schedule. Right below that is our time off accrual system. This is definitely an optional feature if you would like to use it, as far as actually being able to track the banks of time within our system and how much hours they have available to them. Like I said, if you choose not to use this, you of course can still use our time off system and you can run reports on what they've used. This is just more what they have. And how we do that is by creating these specific profiles. So let's say a civilian 0 through 5. They're going to accrue this many hours monthly or yearly, and then that'll automatically load into those banks. And then again, whenever it's used, it will deduct from those banks. All right, and lastly in the profile is this general information. So this is where we can actually customize any of these fields. So to add or remove any of these, all you have to do is go into your members tab. And again, these are all things you can do on your own. You don't need to call us for this. You can go in and you can delete any of the fields that you may not want. So I can go through and I can just start removing these. And then to add any new ones, it's very easy. It's just from the left side there. It's all drag and drop functionality. So you can pull those right in and then relabel them as needed. And then if you're looking to come on as a new customer, one thing too, I know it can be a little daunting to load in a lot of information, but we do have import tools that I can use. So you don't have to hand enter really any of this. We can actually do a mass import of all that data. And then as far as getting access to your data, we do have a couple of different tools here. We have an exporting field. So if you click on this button, that'll actually download all this data right into an Excel file. You can print it, you can save it to a PDF. Along with that, of course, using some of those different filtering options to choose what you're actually taking out of the system. So you can reduce the size of it if you just want like a phone number list, for example. I could just pull a column in here of phone numbers and names. Something as simple as that can be achieved just by using your filters on the top right. And then one last tool here is our mass messaging feature, and then we'll jump right into the calendar. Now, don't confuse this message with what you would utilize if you're trying to actually get coverage for overtime or any shift in general. This is more just, I want to send an email to my staff to remind them of something. I can click on this checkbox in the top left corner. That'll select everybody's name, and then I can click on send message, which from there I can do an email and a text, or an email or a text message. All right. Perfect. Well, before we jump into the schedule itself, I'd like to run one more poll here quick just to kind of get a feel for what everybody who's joining is currently using. So we have a lot of people who are primarily using spreadsheets, or if you are familiar by using another scheduling solution, whiteboard, something a little more manual. Definitely nice to kind of get a feel for how you're using it, so that way when I describe it, I can kind of tailor it towards that. So we'll just give this a few moments here as everybody's filling that out. All right, and let's see what we're working with. All right, so it looks like, so primarily spreadsheets. It's pretty common, like I mentioned, as a lot of people are managing their schedules on Excel. Okay, whiteboard, share calendars. Perfect. All right, so yeah, I'll touch on a couple items as we're going through the schedule here of how we can help improve in some of those different areas. All right, so what we're looking at right now here is our monthly calendar. So the monthly calendar is probably our most popular screen as far as reviewing your work schedule as an administrator. You can see the most information all in one page. You can make a lot of your approvals right from here, and really just manage all of your schedules. Now, we do have a couple of different filtering options. So if you're a larger, let's say, sheriff's department, and you have, a corrections, a road side of things, and a dispatch for 150 people, these filters become very important, because what you can do is go into your edit link. You can then select a specific schedule or groupings of those, and you can actually reduce the size of that page to just show you that group. So a couple of different ways to look at this info, and then I'll be walking you through how we can actually make changes to it. But I did want to show you a couple other options. We do have a few different weekly views. So if a weekly option is more what you're used to seeing, this is a great one too. It just gives you 7 days at a time, left to right, showing you who's working on any given day. And then we do also have a couple of different daily views. Daily summary view is a great one, just to give you a roster for that day to show you who's working. And then anybody who's on time off, of course, or trades or events, anything like that. So all of those screens are primarily, again, for more of your schedulers, your admins, your supervisors. But there's one other screen I wanted to show you quick here before we make some changes, is the My Schedule page. And the My Schedule page is very important because as an officer, this is really the only page you need to know how to use within our program. So it's because they can see their own personal calendar to know when they have to work, and this is also where they can put in any requests. So very quick and easy. And of course, 95% of the time, your end-level user, like your officers or your dispatchers, they're going to be doing all of their actions right on their smartphone. So that's something I can walk you through here shortly. But just to put in any of those requests, if I click on the 15th here, let's say we want to interact with that. I'll click right onto that shift, and then you get two options. You can either request time off, request a trade. Let's say we hit request time off. This is where you can modify that. So it'll default to whatever that shift is. But if you want to do, just 1 hour of that shift, or you could even do a whole week, modify your date range, choose your time code here. Let's say we want to choose vacation. If you are going to be utilizing those accrual banks, it will actually tell you right here. They have 100 hours in their bank. It's going to cost you 8. You'll have 92 after approval. And then when I hit request, that's now pending approval. So again, depending on how your department is structured, we can have that route a notification to the appropriate supervisor who needs to be aware of that request that needs to be approved. And then as far as trades go, trades are ones that, again, everybody does a little bit differently. So if you have any unique rules behind those trades, we can build that into the back end of the system. We do have two different types here. We have giveaways and we have swaps. A giveaway is me just offering up my shift and then somebody's going to work for me that day. That's the end of that transaction. Where a swap is actually going to require that you offer me a shift back, more of a day for day exchange before it even gets approved. So again, depending on your rules there, a lot of people who do swaps might require that they're paid back within the same pay period. We definitely have some options there. Now, once they've chosen what they want to submit, you can choose your time frame. And then also an important part of this is choosing from a list of recipients. So you can either, as an officer, send out this trade request to everybody who's qualified and eligible to work for you. So that's what this list is telling me. These are only the people who are allowed to work that shift. I can send it out to that whole group, or maybe I've already spoken with Joe over the phone, or he's my buddy and I sent him a text. I know he's going to work for me, so I could just send it directly to Joe and not bother the others. So send out that trade request. That'll go out text and or email, depending on what Joe has set up in his profile. And then Joe has then an opportunity to respond to that and accept it. Which for Joe, he can then go into his My Schedule. He'll see this request from Frankie, see when it was submitted, giveaway for that shift. Yeah, I'm good with taking that. So we can go ahead and hit take shift. And then again, that's now awaiting your supervisor approval. And again, with some of the different rules that we can set up, maybe you don't want to approve those. I can have the trades automatically approve themselves. If you're, going to keep it within your specific parameters, there's definitely some different options there. We do offer an option to also link up your personal schedule as a user with an external calendar. I know a couple of you said that you're using shared calendars like Google or Apple Outlook, anything like that right now. Think of it this way, where you would then manage everything within the Aladtec program. But for those end users who might be, very familiar or very used to seeing it on a Google Calendar, I can hit Get Link here, and that'll actually give me the ability to sync up the two. So whenever an update is made within our program, it'll feed over to those schedules. All right, so let's go back to the actual calendar and approve some of those different requests that I just put in here. So again, as more of a supervisor and admin, this is where you can actually see those different items. So we have our time off and our trade. We'll go ahead and review those. So if I click on this time off here for Frankie, I can see again when it was submitted. I can see those hours, hit approve. And then once I approve that, that's going to send Frankie a notification, and it'll create an open shift here for where he was scheduled. And then as far as the trade goes, if I click on that trade, again, all your details of when it was submitted, any notes that were added to it, who accepted it. Once I hit approve, that's all I have to do. So that'll actually make the switch. So Joe's now working for Frankie. You have that trade record right there, and it also sends them both a confirmation message. All right. So the next part I wanted to talk about was overtime, as this is something, again, that everybody kind of has some unique rules. So we try to keep it flexible as far as being able to accommodate to the majority, of course. But if you have, again, specific questions on how your overtime process might work into this, feel free to drop that into the chat. So if you have an open shift that you're trying to cover, like this officer position here, we have a couple of different ways of notifying people of that and encouraging people to volunteer and sign up for it. So by clicking on this blue envelope, that's going to take me to my coverage alert page. So the two options I have are selecting that officer position, and then you can hit send. So what that's going to do is page that out to everybody who's qualified. It will also send it out to people who are, well, I'm sorry, it'll automatically exclude people who are already working during that shift, and it will also exclude people who are already on time off. So it really should only go out to the people who are eligible. That's, again, just your default setting. So if you wanted to send it to just a part-time group or maybe your third shifters first, there's a couple different ways we can target those groups. But again, that'll go out to everybody, text and email. It will be automatically populated. It'll give you details. This is what the email looks like, saying that your department's looking for somebody to cover the following. It'll have a position, schedule, date and time, and then a link that they can click on. And then the second option we have, which is a relatively new feature that I'm excited to show everybody, is our staggered notifications. So the staggered notifications are new profiles that we can create to actually reach out to people one by one rather than a mass message. So it does give you a little bit more automation as far as having the system take care of that for you, where in the previous method, you would actually have to approve those as a supervisor, which I'll go back and show you that shortly. But with this profile, this is where, let's say I want to have this reach out to everybody every 15 minutes. It is the amount of time that they have to respond, or you can increase that based on these increments. And I can send that based on a couple of different options. So whether that's based on a date hired for seniority purposes, we could do it just based on total hours that are within a particular date range. So week, month, year to date, or pay period. And then we also do have a few different options here on the bottom for last accepted or last offered. So the last offered is more of that Rolodex style that will actually just work down your list. And then if somebody accepts it, it'll stop there. And then next time you have a shift, it'll start right back where it left off and then continue down that list. So you can use a mixture of these if you want to prioritize those, do a primary sort based on hire date, but then do the other one based on hours. Again, we can get pretty creative. It's just a matter of knowing what you need. But one other really nice part of this too is if you are using this particular method, it does not require that you automatically approve those, or that you have to approve those yourself, where once the person agrees to it, then they'll get assigned right into the schedule and the process stops. All right, so back to the first method I was showing you. Let's say you send out a mass coverage alert. We have 3 signups here. Then what you can do is hit edit schedule, which that's going to take you to the hourly editor page. And this is a really important screen for anybody who is going to be managing your schedule on a daily basis. So any approvals, adjustments, if you're maybe someone who has, rather than just 4 officer positions here, you might have, I have Bob in my north zone Sue is in the East zone and Frankie's going to be in the West. So there's really a number of different ways we can create and customize those positions, and then using some of these other features, we can kind of drag and drop. But as far as your signups go, in this availability section, I have a lot of good information that can help you determine who you're going to approve. Where, let's say if I wanted to pull in again, let's do a date hired and maybe rank or title. Let's see if those are populated. So title is, but I have date hired. So out of these three, I can see who the most senior person is. I can see that's going to be Ronald here. He's an officer. The calculator can give you those total number of overtime hours, regular hours, special events, details, anything like that. And then once I'm ready to make my decision, let's say we want to grab Ron here. I'm going to click on his sign up, and then I can also apply a specific time code to this. This is really more for reporting purposes. So if you're not going to be running a lot of reports, it's not as important if you're just managing your schedule. But if you want some very specifics of what type of overtime it is, or if you're going to be using some of this for pay data, this becomes very important. But let's say this is overtime due to a sick call. I can then approve Ron's sign up. That will assign him into that position. And one thing you'll notice too is it also did automatically decline the other two signups that were there. So all three people who were involved in that process got a notification letting them know they were approved or denied. And that process, I mentioned it a little bit, but that process does, of course, also apply to any sort of details. It's not just regular overtime. So if you're the university department, for example, at a school, I'm sure you staff a ton of different events. So we can create football games and any sort of festivals or concerts. We can create as many custom schedules as you need, and then you can just open up whatever those vacancies are. So that way, when you're going back to your calendar, you can see that posted right there. But along with that, it can also be used for training, number of different things. And then if you need to move people around at all, it's just as easy as dragging and dropping. So if I'm taking Bob off of my first shift and pushing him down to security for the day, I can just drag and drop him right on this screen. All right, so back to that main page. I just wanted to show you that security detail. So like I said, if it's more of a, just on the weekends kind of thing, we can have those templates structured in so that way they're only open when you need them or available to open whenever the situation does arise. All right. Just gonna take a peek at the questions here and see if there's anything that we need to address right away. Looks like we're getting all those answered. Thank you, Dave. Perfect. Well, let's jump into the actual mobile site now. I'll show you what it's going to look like on a smartphone. And then from there, we can actually jump into some of the additional functions outside of the schedule. All right, so let's reduce this down here and we will show you what it's going to look like on a smartphone. And I'm going to show you what it's going to look like as more of a member's perspective, because it's really more important for them. Primarily, you're going to be looking at the mobile site or as an administrator, you're going to be managing it on a desktop. But this is a very important part of it where Frankie here, when he opens this up on his smartphone, first thing he's going to see are any of his upcoming shifts, available trades, open shifts, time off, really just anything that's very upcoming in the near future is what this dashboard is designed to do. But on the top right corner, that's where you're going to have a list of a menu for some of the different screens. The daily summary, this is a nice page where it'll actually show you everybody who's working on a specific day. So if I wanted to see, as Frankie, who am I working with that day? I can see that Sandra's my sergeant, Sandra and Sue, actually, Bob, and then anybody who's on time off would all be listed on the bottom here too. You can kind of page through some of the different days using these arrows in the calendar. But most importantly, in my opinion, is going to be the My Schedule page, as the My Schedule gives them all the same functions that it does on the desktop. So this is where you can actually go in. You can see all the different days you're working based on this color-coded system here. So any blue bar there is a shift. If I tap right onto that shift, that's where I can see what's actually going on that day. If I tap onto here, I can see there's firearms training going on that day. And then to interact with it, if I tap right onto the bar there, it's going to give me those options to do a trade, time off, along with, let's say we want to see what's out there for overtime. I can go under my view options here. Let's check open shifts, and then that'll populate any of those vacancies too. So if I tap on the 19th, I can see there's 2 open shifts for a security detail. Tap right onto it, hit sign up, and I've now volunteered to work for that. So those are going to be the primary uses of the mobile site. Next here, we are going to jump into the forms tool a little bit. So this is where they can actually fill out a lot of these forms right on their phone. But I'm actually going to pop back over to the main desktop version here to show you those features. So let's go into the Forms tab, and these are just a couple samples of what a lot of our other departments are using right now. So if you have any sort of work order for like a vehicle report, inspection forms, incident reports, use of force form, really the options are kind of endless as far as to what you can build in here. And then we also have a lot of workflow that we can build in as far as whenever this particular form is submitted, for example, the equipment maintenance, I can have that automatically kick over an email or a text message to the person who needs to know that. And then from there, you can also have them fill out their own little section on the bottom. So that's where if there's a section to be completed by maintenance, they can put their notes in it. You can check back on it. All of these submissions are then going to be stored within our system. So you don't have to go elsewhere to track it. You have a ton of different reporting options. And then as I mentioned, creating these actual forms is also really quick and easy too. So let's just design a new form. This is all done through your drag and drop tools. So very easy to build out. You can do it all on your own, or of course, our support team is great for making suggestions in this area. If you're using something right now and you just want a little bit of guidance as to, how would you maybe build this? Something that they can definitely help you out with. And then, like I mentioned, you have all that data then accessible to run reports, export it, and then fill it out right from your mobile site. So if you have any questions of what exactly can be built in here, definitely feel free to drop that in the questions. And then a few other options to run through. I wanted to touch on the reporting system. So if you're somebody who's going to be running a lot of overtime reports, or just trying to, maybe run that on, let's say, more just PTO. The scheduled time report, really one of the best reports that you can run, is it gives you a total number of hours that each person's working in a particular time frame. It's going to give you a breakdown per shift, per person. And then again, all of this data is exportable into Excel. So if you need to do any further calculations or run a pivot table or a graph or whatever you may like to do with that information, it's very easy to do once you export that into Excel. And of course, you can run that for any range of time here. So pay period, monthly, quarterly, yearly, totally up to you. One of the other reports, if you're looking for a little bit less information, the summary report will actually give you a total number of hours rather than a breakdown per shift. So that might be more of an annual report that you run. We do also give all of the officers the ability to see their own individual member report. So again, if I'm Frankie and I'm curious as to, how much time off did I use in January, or how much did I use last year? All of the officers would actually get access to their own reports here too, so they don't need to come to you for that information. Now, one other report here that's very important, that's really kind of unrelated to the scheduling data, is our system log. This is especially important for anybody who's using spreadsheets or any sort of manual solution right now. As I've heard many departments say, this is really what they're looking to back up their system with. Is this report tracks every single action that's ever taken within our system. It's going to give you a date and time stamp of when exactly that person took that action, what did they do, who it affected, any details are all going to be off to the right. And this is truly going to be your audit trail. We retain this information from day one of your subscription, so there's never really any point where the data just starts disappearing. But if there's any sort of discrepancy of I had my request in first, this is going to be the place that you look. All right, a couple other items quick. We do have a storage area. So if you did want to upload any sort of documentation in here, if you're looking for somewhere to store policies, procedures, anything like that, it's very common to upload that right into here. You have 200 gigs of storage space. This is really the only section in our whole system that has a data cap on it. Everything else is unlimited. You can have as many forms, as many schedules. There's no issue there, but this one does have a 200 gig data cap on there. And then one other tool I wanted to show you too, as far as kind of accountability goes, kind of thinking of the system log, is our required messages. So this is a nice tool that you can create any sort of message that you'd like, which this is a little bit different than your text message or your email, right? So this is where you can say there's a new policy, please refer to the area to review, something along those lines, just as an example. You can send out that message. And the nice part about this tool is that when Frankie logs into the system next time, this is what he's going to see. And he can click on whatever he wants. Any forms, he cannot bypass this. He has to check this box that says, I agree that I've read and understand this, and then hit continue is the only way he can actually get to his schedule, which that will then, of course, give you a date and timestamp of when each and every person actually acknowledged your message. All right. And just kind of moving towards the tail end of the navigation here, we do also have a help section. So I just wanted to point this out as anybody, again, who's interested in seeing more of a custom demo of the Aladtec system, we will have a link that you can click on that'll send you right to our website. I almost always encourage you just to reach out to us, give us a call, and we'll get you in contact with your appropriate account executive. They'll point you in the right direction. They'll answer all your questions as far as any sort of pricing or any additional modules go. But when you're trying to just learn the basics of the system, the help tab here will give you all those different videos. It's going to kind of show you how to use each and every one of these features. So great resource here, especially on like the mobile site. This one will walk you through how to set up the shortcut right on your smartphone. And then also under the help tab is the contact us. So again, I talked about it very early on in the webinar. We do have an outstanding support team here at Aladtec. You can always give them a call at the 888-749-5550 number. We are primarily staffed 8 to 5 Monday through Friday Central, but we do have an emergency contact line if there is a scheduling emergency outside of business hours. But again, best part, when you give them a call, you don't have to talk to a machine or go through any sort of phone prompts. You'll get a live person on the other end of the phone who's going to answer your questions as an expert. All right. So there are a number of other settings in the back end of the system. I'm not going to go through those here today, but for those who may actually jump into a generic demonstration yourself, I did want to just point this out really briefly. Top left corner, if you click on Setup, that's going to take you to the back end of the program. So this is where you do have a lot of those different configuration options, but we'll definitely save that for more specific questions. But really, that's everything that I wanted to touch on for our initial overview here. Hopefully gave you a lot of ideas of how you might be able to utilize the Aladtec system. And at this point, we have about 5 minutes that, I'll kind of open up the floor for any additional questions. And if it's something that makes sense, I'll actually address it on screen here. So again, if you're holding on to anything, feel free to go ahead and drop those in right now. All right. A couple of questions here. We have one regarding any sort of additional interfaces or integrations and what we have for options there. Aladtec does have your optional API access. So API is the way that we can interface with other programs if it's not one that we already have built or put together. So lots of times it's just a matter of speaking with that other product or program and asking them, are you able to take, an API connection from the Aladtec system? And that's something where we can get that conversation going. So a lot of specifics we'd have to iron out on that, but definitely we do have a ton of options in that area. Looks like we had one question here regarding. Oh, it's a great question, actually, and that's a feature I didn't run through, so I'm happy you mentioned that. So that is the question from John here is if there's any sort of unplanned overtime. So let's say your shift was supposed to end at 1400 and it went an extra hour and a half. This is where you can actually go in and submit an extra hours request is what we use. Let me just verify this is turned on here. Do that quick. All right, so Frankie, if he had worked a few extra hours here on the 7th, what he can do is actually hover over the 7th, hit submit extra hours, and this is where he can actually communicate to his supervisor that he did work some extra hours on that shift. So let's say if I worked from 14 to 15 that day, again, they would probably be doing this from their phone a lot too. Then I can say this is more for reporting purposes and say I was working on first shift as an officer. I want to take that as comp. I can go into my notes. I can type in a particular reason. A lot of people would also require their officers to drop in maybe like a case number and then hit request. So that request would then route to my sergeant, and then I can have, or whomever, and have them approve or actually deny that overtime request. So that should substitute as your overtime slip. All right. Question here from Marcus asking about implementation and how that process works. What does initial training look like, and what do we offer? So I think that's definitely something that's important for everybody to understand. That process, as far as the length of time goes, is really dependent on your urgency to get something up and running. An average timeline is going to be about 2 to 4 weeks. We can get it going faster than that if you have some resources to help with your end, but as far as us kind of getting that initial build, configuring the system, getting that ready to go and released to all your staff, that's kind of the first step. But as far as the training goes from there, we primarily will do more hosted webinar training sessions, not like this, more interactive, right? You're actually on a conference call, and we'll do that for any of your supervisors, any of your admins, take them through step by step what they need to know. And then from there, that's where we will slowly transition to the support team and just handling questions on more of a case by case basis. The system for the officer level of things is pretty easy for them to learn and pick up. So we generally don't do a formal session for them. We'll send them some resources, videos, and written content, and then from there, they can usually figure it out in the first 10, 15 minutes of looking at the system. I have another question here for a department that does have some part-time staff. So it's mainly, the question here is mainly around regulating the hours that they're actually allowed to work, especially if you're allowing them to go sign up for shifts and pick up some of those different options. One of these settings here that we'll take a look at quick is the work limits. This is where you can set up a rule for continuous number of hours worked in a row, total hours worked in a specific time range. So that's where you'd probably set that up to say, you know, they can only work 36 hours a week, whatever that figure might be, and then actually have it stop them there. And then also we do have a minimum time off in between shifts. All right. Well, that's about all the time we have here for today. So I do really appreciate everybody who's joined. A couple things just to point out on the control panel on the right side. Again, in the chat window there, we do have a link that you can click on that'll take you directly to our website for your trial if you're interested. We do also have some handouts. So if you want to download any of those PDFs, we have some customer profiles of some testimonials and reviews in that area, and some other content there. That's a great resource too. But I think just to kind of wrap things up, let me pull up my last loading page here. And I just want to encourage anybody, you know, the website and all of that is a great resource, but again, feel free to just give us a call. Numbers at 888-749-5550, or go to our website at www.aladtec.com. Thanks everyone again, and enjoy the rest of your day.